Hello, and welcome to episode 20 of the In the Clutch podcast. My name is Drew Clutchy, and I'm here alongside my co-host, Jeremy Wilson. Jer, did you witness the Phoenix Suns just absolutely falling apart?
It was awesome. I
It was
enjoyed
awesome?
every minute of that game. Now, I don't hate the Suns by any means. I was hoping Luca would win because I'm more about individual greatness than team greatness, I guess. I
Okay.
I would hope that one of Luca or Giannis won this year's championship.
So, and that's the role you played for Portbury High School as a point guard, so that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. The individual greatness of me carrying our team to the two wins that we got.
Hey, was it real? No, we beat, we had St.
Oh yeah,
Stephen's in our division.
we
Yeah.
beat one
We were
team
closer, we
point.
were closer to 500.
We had 3 wins, I think.
Yeah, we were
But
not bad.
all the same, I would hope that I was cheering for Luca in this series. So the
Okay.
fact that they just absolutely laid it on the Suns like that, I thought was awesome.
So I'm all for a team dominating. So for example, whenever Tom Brady's in the Super Bowl, I always root for Tom Brady.
Sure.
And similarly, like LeBron winning a whole bunch of championships, I'm on board with that, all that kind of stuff. The Warriors doing it. So I wanted the Suns to win, and I'm going to say I stand corrected because I'm currently sitting in a chair. So I sit completely corrected because at some point, probably around episode 13 of the In the Clutch podcast for the playoffs, I was talking about how the Suns, you have to bet on the Suns because they haven't given you a reason not to, and they're by far and away the best team in the league. And I sit completely corrected because the Suns are now out. And for anybody who hasn't heard about it yet, if you've been living under a rock, the Suns scored 27 points in the first half, and Luka Doncic scored 27 points in the first half. So they were down 57 to 37 or 57-27 at halftime, and then it didn't really get better. It actually got worse. They were down like high 40s, like 46, 47 at one point, and then
Yeah.
obviously they just gave up at the end of the third quarter, and that was that. So the
I
Suns
believe
season
their
was just over.
I believe their maximum deficit was 46 points.
Right.
And it ended being only like a 30-point game. Like it looked similar to how Bucks Celtics ended, and Bucks Celtics wasn't close either.
Right.
But Suns Mavs was ridiculous.
It was
But
ridiculous.
so it did end a little closer than it actually looked in terms of it ended at like a 30 plus point loss. But the Suns played Chris Paul for the first 4, 5, 6 minutes of the fourth quarter, and Luca did not see the court. And Spencer Dinwiddie maybe didn't play at all. And
Luka scored 35 points in 30 minutes. So like he would have had he played a full game, like had it been close, he would have had a 50 piece. Now, I've had some time to think about this because that game was Sunday night, I want to say.
yeah, and
And
it was over within the first
yeah,
15
so I've
minutes.
had the game started at 8 and I had from 8:37 until basically now to think about that. And the other thing too, so for anybody who doesn't know what now is, we're just before the start of the third round. So the Bucks and Heat play today. It's Tuesday, May 17th.
Celtics and Heat play today.
Sorry, Celtics and Heat. Yeah, I'm stuck in the second round. So the third round's just about to start. Celtics Heat, and we're literally like just before that game. Actually, it's about 7 o'clock on the Tuesday. So I've had some time to think about the Suns, and I know you didn't want to cover too much of it because you want to move on to what's next. But I have a couple
Oh
things.
no, I'm happy to talk as much as you want about Suns math.
Okay, so I know I put this in the Raptors Cage group chat, and we talked about it there as a group, but I can't even decide what the worst part of the Suns falling apart is. Like, so I'm just gonna read out a few different scenarios here that I've made notes about. So there's option one of something which is really bad, which is that obviously Chris Paul, that was probably his last decent chance to win because Zion's going to hopefully play next year and the Clippers are going to be great and the Lakers might be better than they were and the Nets and all that kind of stuff. So Chris Paul probably won't win a championship in his career unless he goes and joins a team with another superstar, blah, blah, blah. But odds are, statistically, he's not going to do it. So that's really bad. Second, Chris Paul's legacy is now going to be as somebody who didn't win a championship and choked every single playoff run. He's blown the most 2-0 leads out of everybody. He's at 5. And then the closest person's at Blake Griffin, which Blake Griffin's at 3, but 2 of them were with Chris Paul. So
And it might actually be most all time. I can't
yeah,
confirm or deny that.
I can't confirm or deny, but it's definitely most out of active players, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's most all time. So that's really bad. DeAndre Ayton has shown that he's not a number one guy. Like as of right now. So he's
Has he
betting
shown
on.
that he's good enough to be a number 2 or number 3 guy?
Well, maybe, but we don't know that. But the thing is, he was betting on getting a max contract this year. So to me, that's out the window unless he's going to get paid by somebody else. But I also don't think the Suns will let him walk.
I don't know. The Knicks will
So
pay him.
and there are a lot of teams the Raptors would consider paying him, but there's that different situation too. And then the other thing is Devin Booker, and I heard Pat Bev has been on ESPN like a whole bunch in the past few days. Like I thought it was just one of the one-off situations, but they've had him back like 3 or 4 times, and he brought up an interesting point, which is you look at Devin Booker now. What has Devin Booker done? Like Devin Booker to me just lost all credibility because like I had him at number 5 in my MVP voting. Not that the NBA gave me a vote, but now when you look at Devin Booker, it's like, well, what has he done? He was like 1 of 11 or something in the game, and that was Game 7. So now you look at him; he's only made the playoffs one other time. So Devin Booker went from being like a total stud to me to he just blew all the credibility he's worked so hard to gain. So basically, those are the different situations, and I don't even know what the worst part of the Game 7 is.
Right. And like you mentioned, like Devin Booker was the best player on one of the worst teams in the league consistently, and then made the playoffs, and he was good in the first round.
Right.
And he had a really good half against Pelicans in Game 6, Game 5. I can't remember which game it was.
Yeah, and then he got hurt.
But again, he had the opportunity. If one of Chris Paul or Devin Booker has a great game in the last 2 games, maybe the Suns win the series. Or like you mentioned with Chris Paul, if Chris Paul has a good game in the last 4 games, maybe the Suns win the series.
Well, they were up 2-0.
Yeah, but now we have a clearly inferior team with the best player in the series winning because the guys on Phoenix just didn't show up.
I'm so happy we're recording today because there are so many things that I like. This boggles my mind about this whole series. So here's one thing that absolutely boggles my mind is if you can think of, hear me out. And this is like a comparison that I thought of earlier today and it's not perfect. But when I think of a winning player, somebody that remarkably comes to mind is Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday is a defensive stud of a guard. He's not a liability anywhere. Like, he plays point guard. He can make plays. He can run pick and roll. Some games he'll score 28. Some games he'll score 19. But the defense is always there. He'll have 6 boards. He'll have a steal and a half, of a handful of assists, whether it be 10 assists or whether it be 4. So Drew Holiday is a winning player. Now, on the flip side of that, of course, we talk about like Ben Simmons, who can't shoot, and Harden, who doesn't defend, and all these other players not winning players, right? Are we going to look at Chris Paul's legacy? And even though he's a point guard who can score 20 and get 10 assists and defend, is Chris Paul not a winning player?
I don't think so. Not that I don't think he's a winning player. I don't think we'll look at him as not a winning player. I agree with everything you said about Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday's awesome. Would love to have him on any team that I was building. But again, I don't like. We see Harden as not a winner, but I don't see Chris Paul as not a winner, and I don't think a playoff run at 37 years old is going to really change that. I think he'll be seen in a similar, not exact, but a similar light to how Charles Barkley is seen, where he never won, but he's great. We don't see him as a loser. He was just like somebody who never won.
So not a loser, but somebody that never won. That's a good point.
Right. Like the central aspect of his legacy might be that he never won a championship, but not that he's not a winning player.
So 2 more things that I want to pull from the Suns specifically. It's 1.5 things from the Suns.
I might add one depending on if you include it or not.
Okay. So we go back to the DeAndre Ayton contract thing. So far on the I'm not going to sign a contract and I'm going to play one more great year and then be worth more, we've seen Dennis Schroeder lose. Miles Bridges did the same thing. He had a great year, so Miles Bridges will make more than he would have. We've seen DeAndre Ayton lose. Do you think we've seen Fred VanVleet win? Although that's also just through great play consistently all the way out. But do you think that is something that we'll continue to see, or do you think that risk is too high for players?
So I could be wrong. Was DeAndre Ayton offered he wasn't offered a max extension.
No. And he wanted the max. So
Right.
he went, I'm going to play one more year and make myself worth the max.
Right. And now it's basically consensus, I think, among basketball fans that he's not worth the max.
Well, he's not worth the
Um,
max in Phoenix anyway.
I think it really depends on the type of player you are. I think every player will think that, oh, maybe it hasn't worked for them, but that won't happen for me because I'm better than that. Because that's just like the drive that professional athletes are built with.
Right.
Um, so I think players will continue to do that, whether or not it's the best decision. Obviously, like Dennis Schroeder lost huge.
Right.
But
No, exactly. So then the only other thing, and this is why I said 1.5 things, this doesn't particularly relate to the Suns, but it kind of does. So DeAndre Ayton, in my opinion, should get a max from somebody, but not from the Suns. Because if you're one of the loser teams like Sacramento and like all those teams, Orlando, right? Somebody will pay him the max. He could be the best player on an average team somewhere eventually, so he'll get the max somewhere, in my opinion. But here's the thing: is, and I just want to touch on this. We're all debating on, like, well, not all of us, but whether or not James Harden gets the max. To me, the
right,
problem is it's not that James Harden isn't a max player; it's that his max is too much. So if James Harden
right,
gives you 22, 6, and 8, or 22, 6, and 10, or 22, 7, whatever, right? 24 points. James Harden is a $35 million year player. Like, given the same thing that Orlando would pay him or somebody would. But it's that his max is like 50 million, and going into the end of his contract, it's 60 million.
right.
So it's, to me, which I don't really have anything more to say than that, other than I know it's a hotly debated thing, and we should probably touch on it. It's just, to me, it's James Harden is a $35 million player at 23, 6, and 9. He's just not his max. So I think we need to throw out using the word max, because James Harden shouldn't get his max. He shouldn't be paid $55 million a year.
Right. And I understand what you're saying. And in my opinion, there are like almost three tiers of max players. There are max players, which there are not a ton of, that
Right.
deserve every amount of money that you can give them under the cap.
Right.
So everything you can give them, give Luca, Giannis, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, LeBron, everything you
Kyrie.
can give them, give to them. Who'd you say?
Kyrie.
Not Kyrie.
Well, Kyrie, if you could sign him for 1 year and sure he'd play, but that's besides the point. Um,
There's like a second tier of max players in which they're max players and they hypothetically deserve the max, but they're not to that level. And that to me is the level that like Siakam is on,
right.
where he's a max player and he deserves a max contract, but he's not like really a guy that you really want to have a max contract.
Right.
And
He's
then
the
there's
best
the
max player available for you to sign.
right. And then there's the third tier where it's players that will get a max but don't deserve a max. And that to me is where DeAndre Ayton falls.
Right.
Like DeAndre Ayton is a tier below Pascal Siakam. I'm seeing like DeAndre Ayton for Pascal Siakam trades, and I'm like, no, that doesn't
Yeah,
make
I
any
wouldn't
sense.
trade, but I'd like trade OG and an OB and some stuff.
Yeah, I'd probably give up OG and maybe a pick or two for Ayton, but I'm not giving up Pascal Siakam because he's clearly a better player.
Right. No, I agree. And I think so. And then there's the fourth level of the max, which is the people who have to pay to play like us.
Okay.
The people that have to pay to play like you and I do.
Oh, true. Yeah.
So that's the like that. They call that the negative
Max
max.
contract.
Yeah.
We're charged $100 a year for men's.
Yeah. It's a reverse max contract. But
We give
anyway.
them the max.
So yeah, exactly. Literally, yeah. We give them the max. So then we'll talk about the Mavericks and the Celtics, and like later on, because they've moved on, so we can talk about how great they are. So the only other thing, I'm pretty much done with the Suns. I don't know about you. The Bucks didn't have Middleton. Bucks played relatively great, missing a wing player who can make his own shot, and Giannis obviously needs that. So I don't have that much to say about that either.
Right. You lose in seven without your second best player.
Right.
And obviously the game seven wasn't a great showing from the Bucks. Giannis didn't have a great game.
Right.
But I think obviously some people aren't, but anybody who's saying that Giannis isn't capable of like being that guy in terms of clutchness or anything is
Wrong.
having very, very short term memory, considering we saw him drop 50 points in game 6 of the NBA Finals.
Yeah, on 17 of 19 free throws. So
Right. So I think
currently,
we're past like Giannis has set himself as Giannis is that guy. And he had a bad game, which is unfortunate because the Bucks really needed him to just absolutely carry them. But he carried them in game 6 and still lost with 44 and 20.
right. Currently, Giannis is the best player in the world at this exact moment.
Yeah, and I'm starting to think Luca might be second.
Well, I need to see more still. Young guy, young career. But so then the only other thing is Memphis Grizzlies go home. Not surprising because they didn't have John Morant. They're a young team, and the Warriors, frankly, like just got it done. Right? They're veteran players. They figured it out.
I don't think we've made a podcast since the Grizzlies blowout of the Warriors, which was similar to the Mavericks blowout of the Suns.
I was gonna say that earlier. The Suns bailed out the Warriors because nobody's gonna remember the Warriors getting blown out now in this postseason because it's gonna be all about the Suns. I bet Steph Curry sent Chris Paul like a little thank you message, like a thank you note, send him flowers or something.
Yeah, because the Warriors did without John Morant absolutely did, or what team? The Grizzlies without John Morant absolutely dismantled the Warriors. Like that game was never close.
Yeah, I forgot about
But
that.
yeah, the Warriors. I know it went to 6, but like they were never really at risk, especially without John Morant. Like that's just a clearly better team. And Memphis is young; they'll be back, I'm sure. But the Warriors are just a much better team than Memphis is.
Exactly, and much more experienced as well, which is huge in the playoffs. All right, so that brings us through the second round, completely finished, and we covered the Sun. Obviously, the Suns getting blown out at the end was the most interesting thing from that round because of all the injuries. Like, so obviously, John Morant going down makes that an easy series. Not Giannis not having Middleton alongside him, easy series. Yeah, you've a note there.
Just another note from the last round. Jason Tatum's a superstar now.
Well, we're gonna get into that with the next round because
Okay.
that team still exists. So,
Yeah.
okay, so that brings us through into the third round. So we'll cover, I guess, we'll go Eastern Conference because it's our conference, and then also because it's tonight. So we'll start out Heat Celtics. What are you thinking?
I want to pick the Heat, but I feel like the Celtics are probably a better team. But just based on how I'm feeling, I'll go Heat in 7.
Heat and 7. I'm gonna say Celtics and 7. Here's my theory. Okay, so the Celtics. I don't know how much Celtics Bucks you watched, but I watched a bit of it.
Not as much as I watched Mavericks Warriors.
Right, I watched about 3 or 4 games of Bucks Celtics. The Celtics are so exceptionally good defensively that they can literally just afford to take their chances shooting random threes every single night, and they'll probably get you in 7 games.
Right, because if they shoot efficiently 4 out of 7 games, then you're done.
Not even efficiently, just not poorly. Like, Jaylen Brown didn't show up in game 1. I think he didn't show up in game 3, I want to say. Tatum had a couple games that were non-exceptional. Marcus Smart, like, is all over the place as Marcus Smart is. But the defense is so solid. Grant Williams dropped like 30 in game 7, which is besides the point. Robert Williams didn't play, but the defense is just so exceptional that whatever happens with them happens, but I would bet them beating anybody in 7. Like, I'm so close to having them as my title favorite, which I'm not actually still going to pick them over the Warriors, but it's just they're so remarkably stout defensively.
Right, and I see where you're coming from. I think that Heat defense is also ridiculously elite. I watched I don't even know how long it was, 10-second clip of a defensive possession from the Heat guarding James Harden, and it was incredible to watch. It was like James Harden was triple teamed, but not actually triple teamed, and with no options to pass.
Right.
And it was just an incredible, like, short defensive sequence. So assuming the defenses kind of balance out, I think I'd taking the Heat supporting cast over the Celtics supporting cast because I know there's if we like I don't know if we can call it a wash between Lowry, Bam, and Butler and Tatum, Brown, and Smart. But I'm
Well,
saying that the Heat
Tatum. Let's
other
say Tatum, Brown, and Williams
sure. I'm
to
saying
make it
that the
more
Heat
positionally make sense. So then from there you have Tyler Hero and Derek White as sixth person.
right and like Tyler Hero is to me a much better player than Derek White is.
Yeah, yeah. Derek White's
Um,
not bad though.
Derek White's not bad, no, but
So,
I really like Tyler Hero. Max Drew seems to be a really good player. Gabe Vincent is quality and I guess can play minutes when you need him to, and seems to play well in the minutes that he gets.
Duncan's worked himself out of the rotation.
Into the out, or is he back in? Or
No,
is
he's
just
out of
out?
the rotation.
Right, and I'm not totally sure what's up with that because he hit like 7 threes and then didn't play again.
And that's an expensive bench rider. Like that's like not as bad as Ben Simmons, obviously, but kind of like uncomfortable to have him as a bench rider.
Right, so I'm not sure what's up with that, but I'm sure if they need shooting, they might bring him in at least. Um, but yeah, I just think that the Heat as a team can are capable of beating the Celtics. I think that the Celtics are still less experienced than the Heat. I think Jimmy Butler isn't the level of player that Jason Tatum is, but I think he's capable of being the level of player Jason Tatum is on any given night.
Okay, so that's you hit the nail on the head with what I was going to ask you, which was, would you rather have Jason Tatum or Jimmy Butler? Because obviously Tatum's Tatum, and he's a more complete scorer, and they're both. I'm not going to say Jason Tatum is exceptional defensively yet, just based on the history, but in any given game, Tatum, because of his size, strength, and speed, can be a phenomenal defender. So you think you'd rather have Jason Tatum, but on any given night, Jimmy Butler could get him?
It's really tough because obviously Jimmy Butler, we saw him carry that Heat team that went to the finals at times, and Jimmy Butler is a playoff superstar. Like to me, he's not a regular season superstar, but when the playoffs hit, Jimmy Butler is a superstar.
Right.
Um, so I think I would. I don't know because Jason Tatum just dropped 46 in Game 6 against Giannis.
Right.
So I would probably call it a wash, but I think I would pick Jason Tatum. No, sorry, I would pick Jimmy Butler.
See, I actually, which I've historically been a Tatum hater. I think I'd pick Jason Tatum. Just barely.
It's really tough, and I think it's almost a wash.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's so like this series. So, and this is something I've thought for a couple weeks now, and give me a second, so don't jump on me right away because it's gonna sound kind of weird. But I'm less excited for the Final Four here than I was for round 2 because everybody in the Final Four is exceptional. Versus in round 2, you have like the Grizzlies where we're like, I don't actually know what's gonna happen there at all, and you have similarly like Philadelphia, Harden, and Embiid are either gonna go on this big tear or they're gonna do exactly what they did. So versus when we get to this Final Four, all 4 teams, with the exception of maybe the Mavericks, but the Mavericks arguably the best remaining player. Right. There's at least 3 of the 4 teams, therefore, are so complete and offer such a complete game that if the Celtics get the Heat in 6, everybody will be like, oh yeah, okay, if Tatum averages 33 points per game in the series, they play great defense, they get them great. If Kyle Lowry is averaging 18 points and 10 assists every game and the Heat get the Celtics, same thing, play great defense, everybody's on board with that. If the Warriors hit a million threes and play Warriors defense, then they're going to get the Mavs because the Mavs aren't as complete of a team, especially defensively. Or similarly, if Luka Doncic averages 33, 13, and 13 through the series, and the Warriors are really going to struggle with that, and Dinwiddie averages 24 points a game, Brunson averages 24 points a game, then the Mavericks get the Warriors. So, like, any outcome, barring, like, again, somebody getting swept or something, but any predictable outcome that's likely to happen within 90% of all possible outcomes kind of likelihood, it's to me it's almost less of an interesting round. Like that's not, and this is where I say don't get on me too quick, because like that's not to say I'm not excited. I'm gonna watch all the games. I'm every single night, all that kind of thing. But from the idea of trying to predict it, it's kind of like all the teams are exceptional, and if anybody gets anybody, it's like that makes sense.
Right. And the thing I want to get on you most about, honestly, is you saying the Mavericks aren't as complete a team defensively as the Warriors are. Because I know Luka is not a very good defender, but the Mavs are a great defensive team. So all the same.
Okay,
Moving
but
past that, I do think the playoff.
no, I'm not prepared to move past that. Who do you
Go ahead.
put? Okay, so you put Luca on Draymond
Yeah,
because you can't put him on Wiggins, and then you can't put him on any of the three guards who run too much.
sure.
So naturally, he's going to end up on Draymond. But Draymond also runs a lot
Yeah.
through like the dribble handoffs and stuff like that. And Draymond's going to punish him physically just in terms of getting him tied up in screens and all that kind of stuff, right?
I'm not worried about Luca physically though. Luca's 6'7", and Luca can. I'm not. Luca is in the lane every night, initiating contact. Like I'm not worried about Luca physically wearing down.
Not at all.
Not less than I am worried about almost any other player wearing down.
Interesting. Okay, so continue. I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, but I agree with you in that. In my opinion, the playoffs kind of, if assuming your team's not in it, the playoffs kind of peak in entertainment value in the second round. Because it's like 1-8 series aren't fun for the most part. I know Pelicans Suns was a little bit, but like your 1-8 and 2-7 series are probably blowouts.
Right.
So just the fact that you can get
shout out to the Nikola Vucevic Orlando Magic for like 4 years.
yeah, exactly.
The 1-8 series is a blowout. Sorry, continue.
So if you can get past that round, and now you should have 4 good series like we did, because we had 2 game 7s, and Grizzlies Warriors without John Morant wasn't great, and then Heat
Embiid.
Sixers with Joel Embiid would have been a little bit different too. But yeah, again, I think that's kind of peak entertainment value, so I'm not going to really get on you about the playoffs like having peaked last round.
Well, and I felt that way about last year where we got to Bucks Suns. And same thing, both teams are incredible. We're in the finals, and Giannis had an incredible game 6. But maybe it's because the Raptors have been eliminated for so long. Like, well, by last season they've been eliminated basically by game 40. But well, no, it was after the All-Star break that they got COVID. But anyway, I digress. By the time we got all the way to the finals last year, I was kind of just like, okay, like Giannis did something incredible and it was impressive, and like I was stoked on that. But I find it just gets so like there have been so many basketball games and so many playoff games, and all of the remaining teams are good.
Yeah, I'm with you. So we made our Celtics Heat pick. What's your Warriors Mavs pick? I think you already said Warriors were your finals favorite, so I'm gonna assume you're picking the Warriors.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Warriors in 6, but I'd like to just put some respect. Say similar to Jason Tatum and Luka Doncic are 2 players actually that I historically have not liked, and I obviously have to put a lot of respect on Luka for what he
What's your
did.
issue with Luka?
Well, as you know from my personal gameplay, I like players who defend.
Right.
And historically, he hasn't defended.
Sure.
And additionally, I like players who shoot threes, but more like JJ Redick, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson run around and shoot threes, not like James Harden slow down and then use your physical size to take threes.
Can we just comment on Luka has the slowest step back I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, but he's like 6'7".
Yeah, but that slow of a step back is also super effective. It's like it doesn't create space, and yet he just hits shots over people anyway. It's awesome.
Yeah, Luka is something which Luka's game favors the playoffs because everything slows down, and Luka's a big boy who uses his body. So it's kind of like Jokic or Embiid, honestly, where like it's favored to be a bigger person in the playoffs and have size. Right. Because just for that general thing of like everything's going to slow down anyway, so you might as well have to run up and down the court less and hunt matchups.
Right. And like Luka is totally different than most high scoring guards that you see because he has no speed. It just is non existent.
Right. No, I
But
agree.
all the same, in terms of, I am also going to pick the Warriors. I would like the Mavs to win because I'm really just cheering for Luca at this point.
That's kind of
Um,
silly. You know, you can cheer for Curry, right? He's still there.
I like Steph, but Steph doesn't have any GOAT potential, and we'll get to that in a second. I don't want you to jump on that quite yet.
I'm
Uh,
crying. It's fine.
so
That's
moving
it
on.
for episode 20 of the English podcast.
I'm in for Warriors in 6. I agree with you on that take. I think Luca can take a couple of them, but the Mavericks just aren't as good a team as the Warriors, and they weren't as good a team as the Suns. But the Warriors will show up and take care of business.
Right. And I just like Luca is so good. And I just feel like I have to say that out loud for all the times that I've made fun of him or said that he's not the guy. So I'd like to take, not that I can take those back, but I'd just like to acknowledge that Luca is so good.
Yeah, Luca is awesome. And so moving on to what I just said that upset you clearly. There are 2 current NBA players I believe have the possibility of surpassing LeBron and Jordan.
Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan.
Giannis and Luca.
Okay, sure, we'll go a different way.
So starting with Giannis, I think we're probably on close to the same page about Giannis. It's not that these aren't players I believe will be the GOAT. They're just players I believe have the possibility of becoming that. Giannis, back-to-back MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Finals MVP. Give him some more time, a couple more MVPs and a couple more championships, and he can be that guy.
Okay.
Luca is 23. No championships or MVPs as of yet, but in his 26-ish career playoff games is averaging like 33, 9, and 8. In his career is averaging like 28, 8, and 8. Like Luca is a monster, and I think if he can get the championships, the MVPs will come as long as the Mavericks are good. If he get the championships, I'm just saying.
Do you want me to weigh in?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I think that nobody is going to catch Jordan and Braun for a really long time. And I think a lot of players are going to end up in the tier of people we talk about still, and then the tier of people we go, oh yeah, I forgot about that guy, and then the tier of we don't talk about it all in 15 years. So what I mean by that is, okay, Jordan won 6 rings. 6 of them. And Braun has 4, and Kobe got 5. And Shaq was physically dominant. Like, more than we've ever seen before. And so is Giannis. So, like, to me, nobody's going to catch. It's like Braun and Jordan, however you rank them. And then everybody, for the most part, kind of talks like, puts Kobe there because Kobe won 5 in the modern era. It was just 1 less than Jordan, right?
Right.
And then you could talk about like Kareem and Bill Russell and blah, 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 but let's just look at like the modern era within the last 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, I guess 2022, 30 years, right? Like, you can talk about all of the historical greats, but we have to leave them out of the conversation for the purpose of making it only last 10 minutes. So there's Braun and Jordan, and then there's Kobe right there. And then you have people who are dominant in a different way, like that's Shaq. And to me, that's where Giannis will fall, where like incredible player, won a lot of things, but he's not going to be really in the top bracket. And then from there, you have players like Charles Barkley, who like will be like, oh yeah, Barkley Barkley is pretty good. And to me, that's where your Westbrook falls, and like Kyrie will fall into that bracket. And Luka could fall into that bracket, or he could fall into like the bracket up from that, like the Giannis, Kevin Durant, Shaquille O'Neal bracket. And like similarly in like the Charles Barkley, Kyrie Irving bracket, you have Vince Carter, AI, all people like that, right? So I think to me it divides into different tiers, but I think it's a waste of time. Well, not a waste of time. It's fun to talk about, but like I don't actually think, like, if I had to place bets, we're not going to be talking about Giannis or Luka, or frankly, maybe not anybody from this age group, like this current Trae Young, Jason Tatum age group, because it's so statistically difficult to get to 4 rings at minimum. Because if Giannis wins 3 more MVPs and no more rings, then he's not like on the Jordan Braun level.
I disagree. I think that there was a point that you made that I really like. I think we underestimate how often generational talents come along. Because if you think about it, like after Jordan played, it was probably thought that nobody will ever come close to touching Jordan for a long time. Jordan retired in like '02 and LeBron was drafted in '03. So that was a very quick, like obviously LeBron wasn't in that conversation yet, but he was drafted immediately after.
Okay.
So we get to that point, and it's like, I don't know, Giannis with 3 is going to get to 3 or 4 MVPs.
Right.
So once you get to 4 MVPs, there are only a certain amount of people who have ever won 4 MVPs.
Right. But Tim Duncan won 5 rings, and we still don't talk about him in the GOAT conversation.
Right, because Tim Duncan wasn't winning MVPs.
Right, but you have to have MVPs and rings.
Yeah, you do.
So to have statistically the odds of any of them having both. I can't remember where I saw it. It was on YouTube somewhere. But somebody talked about, it might have been on ESPN, honestly, and it was like how many points these players have to score to break like the top 10 points all time and stuff like that, and like all of the other various statistics. And when you look at it, it's so hard to be one of the best because all of the guys like Kyrie Irving, and this was a really long time ago, so I can't quote the exact statistics because I don't have it in front of me, but Kyrie Irving has to average like 26 points for like 8 more years. And like Russell Westbrook and all these, like even KD was kind of far off, like all these different players, right? It's so hard, let alone the physical incredibleness of it, like witnessing it. To like we've seen LeBron win 4 and Tim Duncan won 5 and Kobe won 5 and all the MVPs and this and that. Statistically, there are so many take the last 10 years. How many different players have been in the All-Star game? And then how many of them are we really going to notably remember? Let alone how many of them are we going to talk about potentially as the greatest player of all time? It's just so statistically difficult.
Right. And I'm not saying that Luka or Giannis will enter the GOAT conversation because obviously neither of them are there yet.
Right.
I just think that they could enter the GOAT conversation. Like they're the only 2 players in the league right now that I think can be a part of that conversation eventually.
Which, well, why would you put like? So then I guess that means you think that Luka is far and away better than Jason Tatum.
I do, yes.
Because then I guess my thing is, yes, like they can be in that conversation, I guess, but where do you draw the line? Because even, let's say, just for fun, easy numbers, there's a 10% chance that Luka or Giannis become the GOAT. Which obviously it's not 10%. It would be 1% or half of a percent or whatever. Who else can you say is in the conversation?
Nobody. Jason Tatum's not going into the GOAT conversation. Kyrie's not. Kevin Durant's not.
Well, all of the players that are too old are not. Like, obviously, you can count them all out. And that includes, like, Jokic and Embiid and blah, blah, blah. They're all too old.
So I'm just assuming, based on what we've already seen from Giannis and Luka, if they continue at the kind of pace they're on, they can be in that conversation sometime. I just want to make we obviously we can move on from this at some point and talk more, but the actual playoff. I have one comment on what you were talking about on how statistically hard it is to pass people. This was going into Game 5 of Bucks Celtics, so obviously it's not a perfectly up to date stat, but Pat Connaughton would pass LeBron as the NBA's all-time leading playoff scorer if he had scored 7,224 points in Game 5.
Yeah, like that's exactly it. And like I know that's obviously a slightly exaggerated stat, but like think about it. Like think about the incredible career we've seen from Kawhi Leonard. and the incredible career from Steph Curry.
Right.
None of these players are anywhere near the GOAT conversation. Like I see what you're saying with like, yes, they could be in the GOAT conversation if Giannis wins three rings in a row. Then he's probably going to win 3 Finals MVP, and he'll probably win 2 regular season MVPs in that stretch. But it's so rare because think of all the great players we've seen, even in the last 10 years, like that are not like the GOAT conversation is so elite.
Right. And that's why it's limited to there are a lot of great players in the league, and I think only 2 of them could even maybe enter that conversation. And one has already won back-to-back MVPs, Defensive Player of the Year, and Finals MVP, and is like 27.
Right.
So that like it is an absolute elite category, and I'm not saying either of them will get there.
But I think it's too much of a stretch even to say that not like, oh, like I'm not saying either will get there. I would say they won't get there. Like the odds are so low, they won't do it. So
right, but the odds were that low that LeBron would get there. Like
right.
you would have said the same thing about 22-year-old LeBron saying, "Oh yeah, he'll catch Jordan," if we had been doing this 15 years ago.
Okay, so we're really on a side tangent here, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Here's the 2013 NBA All-Star Game.
Okay.
In this game, notable players: LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, KG, Kevin Garnett, Dwayne Wade. Kevin Durant was in that game, but he was obviously younger. Kyrie Irving, Drew Holiday, a whole mix of other people, blah, blah, blah. Kobe Bryant, Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, Dwight Howard, Tim Duncan, LaMarcus Aldridge, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, but again, same thing, pretty young. None of those players are in the GOAT conversation, and that All-Star game had D. Wade, Carmelo Anthony, KG. It had Kobe, who's kind of almost there, sort of, maybe, and Dwight Howard, who at the time was phenomenal.
But, right, and like, what I'm saying is that I think Giannis and Luka will all time be better than all of those players, except for LeBron.
That's a wild claim. I'm happy this is recorded because I hope we can look back at this when they retire.
And I hope we can look back at this and say, man, look how right I was.
Hopefully Spotify is still a thing back then, so we can like review this thing. But yeah, I think that's I guess the last thing we'll say on it. We still haven't covered the Celtics Mavericks, and we're running out of time here. But the Warriors Mavericks, other than like briefly. Yeah. So that's the last thing I'll say about it is I see what you're saying, but to me the statistical probability of it, or rather improbability of it, just overrules the whole thing.
Well, then I guess nobody can ever enter the GOAT conversation again. We can move on.
Okay, fair enough. So then we both said Warriors in 6, and then we have a flip of Celtics and Heat in 7.
Right.
And then who do you have going all the way? Like who, if you're looking at the Final Four, who would you pick to win the chip?
I think the Warriors are much better. Like I think the gap between the Warriors and what they are at their peak, obviously they weren't taking the Grizzlies all that seriously.
Right.
So we haven't seen peak Warriors in this playoffs. But at the peak of performance for all the teams, I think there's a sizable gap between the Warriors and everybody else.
The other thing, which I don't disagree with that. I think it's closer between the Celtics, which I know you didn't even pick the Celtics, so it kind of depends on your opinion here. But I think the other thing too is when you see Game 6 or Game 7 of a series, you see the game where the most recent game you've seen from any given team is when they've got the series figured out. So like They put Dylan Brooks on Jordan Poole, and he just locked down Jordan Poole, but they didn't start doing that until like Game 3 or Game 4. So if the Warriors go up 2-0 because the Mavs haven't figured out that piece yet, or like how they're gonna limit Clay or whatever, like whatever the thing ends up being, right? Similarly, like the Celtics just went, we're gonna guard Giannis 1-on-1 for the most part, and kind of like sort of send help and just guard everybody else and just kind of, you know what I mean, let Giannis drop 30, and that's the way it is. But it took them a few games to figure that out. Right. So you see the best version of the team being defended in Game 6, Game 7, whatever it is. And you have to remember, totally new team, for example, like the Mavericks, they might, let's say they put Dinwiddie on Jordan Poole, and Jordan Poole might drop 21 points in the first half tomorrow. So then they
Right.
go, okay, that didn't work. And then they switch it to Brunson, and then same thing happens or whatever. Or they switch Brunson onto Jordan Poole, and then Klay Thompson goes off because somebody else is on him, blah, blah, blah. So it takes time to work out all the things, right? So when you look at certain teams after a game 6 or game 7, you might be like, oh, they're going to get smoked by the next team they play. But you have to remember, there's going to be a whole new discovery period.
Right. And that, like, in terms of what I think about the Warriors, like you mentioned Jordan Poole, I think every team left has, to some extent, top tier talent. And I'm not talking about like the elite of the elite players. I'm talking about players that are just really, really good.
Right.
And I would say the Celtics have two of them in terms of Tatum and Brown. And the Heat have really just one of them in Jimmy Butler. Maybe Bam at times and Kyle Lowry at times and Tyler Hero at times. And the Mavs, I would say, probably only have one. But the Warriors have 4, 5.
Which,
like, if I'm listing the best players in that Warriors Mavericks series, obviously, like, Jalen Brunson and Spencer Dinwiddie have proved to be really good players, but I'm not sure I would take either of them above Andrew Wiggins, who's the Warriors' 5th, maybe.
yeah. Well, it's not, he's really the 4th if you're talking about
I'm
offensively.
talking about just quality of player.
Quality of player, Draymond's second best player in the Warriors because of what he does defensively.
Right. So if I'm listing the top 5 players of in the series and I go Mavs, Warriors, 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 tough to take the Mavs in that series.
Yeah, absolutely. And okay, so that actually brings me to an interesting point that I have in my notes here, and I wasn't sure if we were going to get to it or not, but you've brought us to it, so it's great how things work out. So we'll end with this because we're running out of time here. The game is about to start. We're almost at 8:00, and it's
Jays game's
8:30
already on.
Oh, the Jays.
It's 2-0 Jays. If anybody was wondering.
Yeah, I guess that'll be over by the time this publishes. So that's fine. We're not spoiling anything. We should do it in the clutch live. That'd be a good plan. So you talked about how it goes Mavericks and then Warriors in terms of the best players in that series.
Right.
That brings forth to me an interesting point that I had is I really worry watching teams of 1 star. That's not plural. Even though I've seen it successful so many times. It's like when you see Luka in Game 7, like obviously that game was blown out of the water right from the start. But you see it with Giannis. Like Giannis goes off the court and they just slide. And then Giannis comes back on the court and then the Bucks are back in it. And then they slide. And then the Bucks are back in it. And normally with Luka, it's the same thing. Luka goes off and they slide. And with the Raptors, when we had Kawhi, it was the same thing. And we slide and we slide. So I always debate this in my head because we've seen it both ways where the Lakers had LeBron and AD and won a championship. And the Raptors and Bucks had Kawhi and Giannis respectively and won championships. Is it better to have 1 star, or is it better to have players that are good on the court at all times?
I think you need the star. You need the 1 star. It's very important, I think, to have the 1 star. But I think we are past the point of 1 star being enough. And I think even like LeBron, who's the best player I've seen in my life and the best player you've seen in your life, assuming you don't have some other opinion about that.
No, you're good. You're chilling.
We've seen LeBron as the sole star of the Cavs, or the primary star, like, of the Cavs twice, really. And like in 2007, he was the only star on the team, dragged him to the finals, blow it. Right. And he went back to the Cavs, and when he won a championship with the Cavs, he's not really, like, he's the only elite star on that team, but Kyrie's a star.
Right.
So, or like a very, very good player. So I think 1 star can win a championship still if you have Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday. But 1 star like Luka can't win a championship anymore.
So here's my ultimate question, and we'll leave it at this. All the money on the line, if you had to pick 1 star, and we'll call it elite depth. So be it like Middleton and Holiday, or be it Kyrie and Kevin Love, or Pascal Siakam and Kyle Lowry and company. It's like not like Luka and the Mavericks depth, like elite depth. Right. Or 2 to 3, like 2. So 1 star in elite depth, or 2 stars in passive depth, or 3 superstars. What, all the money on the line, what would you pick? So for the passive depth, think like LeBron and Anthony Davis, and then like Dwight Howard and Wesley Matthews and company.
I think 1-star and elite depth.
That's what you would pick.
That's my pick.
I think I'd pick 3 studs.
I don't know. We kind of saw that with the Nets, and look how that went.
And we'll have well, they didn't. I'd pick 3 studs that actually play, like LeBron, Wade, and Bosh. Like,
right. It depends what level of stars we're picking. If you're telling me I can have 3 stars and bad depth, but my 3 stars are Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and Giannis, I'm probably gonna take my 3 stars.
okay, but what if your 3 stars are Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and I'm trying to think of like the perfect example here. That's actually Kevin.
Yeah.
Kevin's not a good example because he's like KD is KD and he's one of the best scorers to ever play the game. So let's say you could have Embiid, Bradley Beal, and then your 3rd star is like Dame. Like Dame, Bradley Beal, and Embiid, and no depth. So okay,
I think I'm taking 1-star and elite depth. We've seen it work multiple times. I think I gotta take 1-star and elite depth over multiple stars.
I'd pick 3 stars. So the comparison is the 2019 Raptors versus like the Bucks. Well, I guess the Bucks are kind of elite depth, but they're also kind of multiple stars. Or the LeBron. It's the 2019 Raptors, the LeBron and AD Lakers, or like the team I just outlined, which is like Dame, Bradley Beal, and Embiid.
Right, and like you mentioned, the Heat as a team with like the old Heat, the LeBron, D-Wade, Chris Bosh Heat.
I think there's other Heat to talk about.
One with 3 stars? Well, we could be talking about the current Heat.
If you say the Heat, we all know what we're talking about.
But like one with 3 stars, where Bosh wasn't really a star at that point.
Okay.
And like they had good depth. So like I wouldn't call their depth passive, but I also wouldn't call Bosh a star. So it's hard to come up with an exact example of that.
Right. Which, yeah, that's fair. And I'm obviously thinking on the fly. But I think it's good. So generally you pick 1 plus elite depth.
Yeah, I think my choice is 1 elite tier superstar and great depth around them.
I'd go 3 superstars. Well, I guess we'll have to cap it there because we're kind of gearing up here. I got to make some dinner, and then it'll be game 1 of the conference finals. It's come around so quick. We're already halfway through May here, so.
And game 37 of the Blue Jays regular season.
And game 37, if you guys want, we'll give you a Blue Jays update every podcast. Jerry, you can have 10 seconds. You've already used them, though, because you mentioned them twice. It's 10 seconds or 2 mentions. Your choice.
Fair enough. I'll take my 10 seconds next time, and I'll just really pack it.
Okay, sounds good. Plan those 10 seconds out carefully. All right, well, that's all we've got this week for the In the Clutch podcast. We'd like to thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.